you gonna call if you wanna be free? GLOBEBUSTERS! 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 Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call? Yeah! GLOBEBUSTERS! GLOBEBUSTers! GLOBEBUSTERS!
And welcome everybody to GLOBEBUSTERS.
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
And welcome to GLOBEBUSTERS. This is the first time that I'll be hosting GLOBEBUSTERS, so bear with a brother. But I think we have a good show for you guys today. So this is season 9, episode 8. We titled it Fallacious Folly. Basically, the principle of the show being pretty much everything presented as evidence of this heliocentric model is fundamentally fallacious. So we'll get into that in a second. But let's go ahead and introduce the panel members. So first off, we have Zachary Zabala from Good Times for All. Zach, how you doing, brother?
Austin, what's up, man? Doing great. A little bit warm, up in the 90s. That's around 30, I believe, if you go centigrade for all the people across the pond. Warm, but yeah, I mean, I'd rather have it warm than cold. And yeah, I love this topic, so this should be a good one.
Nice. Yes, it is warm. I took Aaliyah out earlier, and I'm like, yikes, it's getting up there. All right, and I think it may be your first time on. I'm actually not positive, but we have, I think, a new guest on today, the legend that is Troubling Tribune. Troubling Tribune, how's it going, brother?
Another day in paradise. Thanks for having me. Really excited.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on, man. Last minute. And you've obviously been crushing. For those who don't know, you want to tell them a little bit about what you've been doing with your show? And I don't hear him, but Troubling has a show on YouTube. And I believe he's also on Rockfin. And he has a bunch of True Earth debates. He's also present on TikTok, so that is cool.
Yeah, and he's also been joining us over on GLOBEBUSTER Tech.
Yeah.
His insight over there has been awesome.
Yeah, that's very cool, man. That's very cool. That new show is dope. I've seen a few of them, and I like them a lot. All right.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so let me move over here. We'll start right here. So, of course, we will be moving over to Rockfin about halfway through the show. So that's rockfin.com/globebusters. We'll maybe get into some more stuff that we can't always talk about. But let's just jump right in to the topic. I think it's very important. And hopefully this helps some people out as to how to approach this conversation with other people. I think one of the number one things I hear is, I don't know how to talk to my family. I don't know how to talk to my friends. I don't know how to broach the subject. It's difficult. And I think this may be the answer. And it's really pretty much the most efficient way to learn how to debate it. So, of course, there is something called logical fallacies, and there's informal and formal logical fallacies. And formal logical fallacies are invalid argumentation. It's an invalid argument. And then you have informal logical fallacies, which lack sound reasoning. So both of these are not going to allow you to get to an accurate conclusion. You may get lucky and be right about the conclusion, but your logic did not get you there. So I we'll kind of start by doing this, and Zach, of course, just jump in. And I think basically what we can do is go through any purported or claimed evidence of the globe or the heliocentric model, and we will quickly discover that, quite literally, I don't think that one exists that's not a fallacy. Zach, can you think of one?
No, actually, I put quite a bit of time into this just as a thought experiment for David Weiss when he did his, well, which he still has up, the 3 Bitcoins for any one proof of a globe. And I could not come up with one that, there's the 3 baskets, works in a globe, works on the ball, or works on both, or flat, globe, both. And I could not put any in just the globe basket. I couldn't do it.
Yeah,
Doesn't
it's
mean
crazy,
that it's
man.
impossible, but I can't find it.
Well, and I've genuinely tried to find arguments void of fallacious reasoning, and the globe simply doesn't have it. Now I'm open to being wrong. I'm still waiting for this amazing evidence, so we'll see. Actually, let me see if this other chat is gonna work. Let's just see what happens if I pop this up.
I do
Okay.
apologize. My internet disconnected there for a minute, but I'm back.
No, you're good. I'll go back to kind of letting you tell the people what you've been doing over on your channel, if you would like to do that.
Sure. Basically, we have been hosting weekly debates on the nature of the Earth and also the nature of the spirit as well, the true fate debate. But the true Earth debate has been very interesting because we have tons of people that just believe that they have a firm grasp on the basics of where we live, and they come in and they just spout fallacious argument after fallacious argument. Even last night, actually, we had somebody tell me to jump off a roof. So when you can't argue, it's best to start ad homing, I guess. But yeah, it's been pretty interesting. And yeah, I'm still looking for that nail in the coffin, non-fallacious, on its face piece of globe evidence.
Yeah, let's see if we can find it in this show because I haven't been able to find it. A lot of people have seen this little PowerPoint that I've created, and it's kind of funny. We use the AI to make some mad ballers, but this is very important to familiarize yourself with the fallacies, and I know that Troubling and Zach would agree because it cuts right through the rhetoric. And if they cannot interrupt you, then they cannot debate you, is what it appears. So let's just cover some of the basics, and then maybe what we can do is just kind of spitball different claimed evidences of the globe and pick apart why each and every one of them is a fallacy. I will be looking in the Rockfin and YouTube chat as well. If you guys want to start typing in random things they claim as evidence, we'll go through them and point out the fallacies in them. And I think that this is all you need to learn to be able to debate it. So one of the most frequent ones, Troubling just brought this up, is the ad hominem fallacy, which is attacking the person instead of the argument. So it is important to clarify, of course, that insulting someone doesn't mean that your argument's wrong. It's when your response or rebuttal is an insult, meaning you don't address the argument, you just respond with an attack, a personal attack, such as flat earthers just don't understand basic science, right? This is, or you're just delusional, you're an idiot, you're stupid, you shouldn't breed, blah, blah, blah. If this is their argument, it's an ad hominem fallacy, obviously. One of the number one things that we get in this arena. Another one of them that's very popular is the credentials fallacy, which is dismissing an argument by asserting the person who made the argument doesn't have the proper credentials. Have you guys ever had that happen? Never. You guys never had that.
Oh my God, so many times.
Yeah.
It's funny because the ones with the credentials don't know the physics or the science or whatever we call it. They don't even know their own science. When Neil deGrasse Tyson was asked what the curvature of the Earth was, he was like, "What, the gravity drop?" He didn't even comprehend the question when he asked how much does the Earth curve and how to address it. Just no clue whatsoever. These people don't know their own model.
Yeah, man.
They know what they've been told. That's it.
I get this one a lot. You think you're smarter than all other physicists. You don't have a degree in this subject. As to say, people can only speak about something they have a degree in, which is just absolutely absurd. Nikola Tesla dropped out of college. So I don't.
One of the greatest mathematicians like in history was this young boy from India who found a mathematics textbook just laying around when he was like 14, 15 years old, and then rewrote the book pretty much.
What I also think is hilarious is when you actually find a source from a credentialed or a somewhat what they perceive to be credentialed source, and it actually agrees with the point that you're making, they'll immediately double back to, well, do they believe in a flat earth?
Yeah. Which is an all or nothing fallacy. Meaning either you must agree with everything that person says. It's all or nothing. Either everything they say you have to believe in, or you can't invoke anything that they say, which is hilarious. I think that this is it's hard to say the number one because they're all so frequent, but you're going to run into this a lot. What you'll see, the common theme with all these fallacies is simply an attempt to avoid the point. It's to avoid the actual substance. Kind of like your girlfriend's cheating on you and you start asking her, wait a minute, why'd you tell me you were at your mom's, but your location said you were at the club? And then she starts talking about, you never do the dishes or whatever. Like,
Yep.
Yeah, just avoid the fact that you were at the club at all costs. Don't address it. And that's what you have to do when you're lying, when you're defending a lie, when you're defending something that can't be properly defended. So obviously this is insufficient to say, oh, well, your argument cannot be true because you don't have the proper credentials to make that argument. That's ignorant. So I think we that's pretty simple to understand. Obviously, another one of the most popular fallacies used in this arena is a straw man fallacy. Oh, shout outs to Justin Johnson. Thank you for the $20 super chat on YouTube. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, thank you.
So, and again, just so everyone knows, we will go over to Rockfin about halfway through. I have some other stuff we can bring up that can't really be covered here. That's rockfin.com/globebusters. Maybe a couple of the mods can drop the link for us in the chat, and it is set to free. Cool. And if you do want to donate, that is a good way to do it because it's not giving money to the grabblers at YouTube. All right. Strawman fallacy is attacking a misrepresentation of the other person's argument. Example, why don't we fall off the edge of your space pizza? This is for sure the number one thing. If anyone pretends to engage in the debate, you get past all the preliminary fallacies of ad homs and red herrings and credentials and getting all this gaslighting. If they pretend they are going to debate, it's almost always a straw man fallacy every single time. So tell me what you guys kind of think about this. Do you guys agree that prior to being able to make a proper determination about anything, any debate, any subject, you need to be able to still man the other position, much less just straw man it?
Absolutely. You need to show that you have a firm grasp of what the opposition is actually saying. That way, the argument's actually narrowed down and it's actually being addressed.
Exactly. You know, I'm throwing these pointers out to you guys because I've been around the globe block quite a bit, and the most succinct way to cut right through to if someone's being genuine or has intellectual honesty about the true earth discussion is to say, can you still man the flat earth position? And they will not even be able to bring themselves to say it out loud. And that is how you know they're not even in the debate. So obviously, still man is the opposite of straw man. So straw man is where you misrepresent the argument. Oh, well, if the earth is flat, then we should see the sun forever. It should never be nighttime. So why don't we always have daytime if the earth is flat? Why don't we
Yeah.
fall off the edge if the Earth is flat? Why can't we see Mount Everest across the entire Earth if the Earth is flat? Right.
Why isn't gravity stronger at the edge?
Yeah.
And making us stand at a slant if it's all pulling toward the center of the disk.
Oh, what? So you believe that we're the only flat planet?
Exactly. And straw manning is an effective tactic because if you can beat up an argument that's absurd, if you can convince the audience that's actually their argument, well, then they're like, yeah, that's retarded, because it is retarded, right? That's why the mainstream articles do this. They always straw man flat Earth, because if you go read it, yes, it is pretty stupid to think that the Earth is a flat disk moving up 9.8 meters per second squared in a solar system vacuum, and we're the only flat planet going around the sun. That's pretty stupid, right? So if that was our position, it would rightfully be dismissed as ridiculous. So
Yeah, I would have a hard time believing that anybody actually believed that.
yeah,
You know, 'cause
unless
it is
maybe
so
they're brand
nonsensical.
new. Yeah. Oh, you're saying like an actual flat earther believe that?
Well, yeah, I couldn't believe that anybody would believe that. Like if someone told me, yeah, well, these people believe this, my first instinct would be like, well, no, they don't. That can't be real.
Yeah, it's
That would
just
be the first
crazy.
thing that popped into my head. Yeah.
Crazy. It's go ahead, Trevor.
I was just gonna say any top 5. These are the top 5 reasons we know the Earth isn't flat. Anything like that is going to be 4 out of 5 or 3 out of 5 are going to be complete straw men.
Exactly, which is very telling. That's why we did that show a while back. Why would they lie? Because they ask us why would they lie, but the real question is why would they lie? If flat Earth is so provably wrong and it's archaic, it's a regression of mankind, why would they have to lie about our position? Our position is that the Earth is stationary, it's fixed, it's like the basement, the bottom floor of the cosmos. Everything moves around it, and it's at the bottom, right? So that's our actual position. If that's so provably wrong, why not just still man our position?
Yeah. So this is what they believe, and they're wrong because this. Not they believe the Earth is a disk floating through space.
So you believe that all the Earth scientists are in on this big conspiracy?
Yeah, that's another good one too. Yeah.
Exactly. That's a good one. And usually what it is it's like a projection of their lack of understanding, right? So the way that they view it is this is inconceivable, which is called an appeal to incredulity. I'm hoping that people are kind of listening. I know this is like schoolish, but this is the first thing we should have been taught in school, is how to think, not what to think, and we should familiarize ourselves with logical fallacies. And it may seem overwhelming at first, but it's not. It's not, and I didn't go to school for it. I wasn't taught this. Even in a private university, I wasn't taught this. I learned this by debating, and you guys can definitely learn it. So when someone says, I can't grasp the magnitude of the lie of the Earth, I can't even see that being possible. I can't even understand how that could happen. How could everyone be in on some secret? Whatever. That's called an appeal to incredulity, dismissing an argument because you can't understand it or you find it difficult to believe. That is fallacious. So yeah, anyway, I think this is one of the biggest ones here is understanding straw man and still mans. And this goes to the true earthers as well. You should be able to still man the globe position. You should be able to. So I do see flat earthers mess up here quite a bit where they'll say, oh, well, they don't even have an explanation for da-da-da. But they do have an explanation, and it might suck, but you need to be able to articulate the still man. It pulls the power out of the other side's sophistry. So anyway, this is a big one to understand. They'll always straw man the flat earth. Troubling. And Zack named a few of the most popular ones. You're gonna always run in this. Stay patient, correct it, and really the most distinct way is like, are you sure you know what you're arguing against? Can you still man the flat Earth? So what's the actual flat Earth position about the sunset? If you're saying you think it's impossible, well, then you must already know their argument and why it's wrong, right? And so straw man and still man are very important ones to grasp. And we can get into more specifics.
Well, Austin, I just want to point out that one of the things that happens in the true earth debates quite often is when you ask somebody to explain what they think the flat earth position is, they'll simply respond with, well, I don't know. That's why I'm here to learn it, right? So, and everybody says something different, or they'll say that, well, there is no explanation.
Right. That's a great point, actually. So that's the number. There's maybe two primary things you're going to get. Something like that. Like, I don't know what it is. The flat earthers don't even agree on it. They don't even have a model. There is nothing to still man. There is nothing to straw man. You guys don't even have a model. Blah, blah, blah. All right. There are flat earth positions that everyone agrees on. And the sunset is pretty much one of them, and there may be some nuances here and there, but obviously the sun's a local light source. It moves away from you. You can't see forever. Very simple stuff as to why it disappears the bottom up. We could get into some of the details. Of course, the most dense part of the atmos is at the bottom of the atmos, which means that the attenuation of light is going to be greater there, the absorption rate of the light. Just like Zack pointed out, your line of sight, say you're 6 feet above the ocean, you're looking out, your line of sight goes straight out. Well, of course, whatever's below your line of sight is going to be closer to the line of sight than the top, which means it's going to converge into that vanishing point at the line of sight first. So it's going to disappear from the bottom up, and in fact, it's going to be a progression, right? Because the top is higher up.
Yep.
Yeah, and if I didn't explain it well, Zack, maybe you want to
play with that. Yeah. Yeah, that's the one thing that people forget. They'll go and punch things into that calculation I wrote. They're like, well, it's only 190 feet at 40 miles. But that would be with a perfect atmosphere. You know, just nitrogen, oxygen, no moisture, no dust particulates, no wind blowing, like a perfect atmosphere, which doesn't happen, especially over 40 miles. So that rate only gets bigger. The angle of your diffraction line, your angular resolution limit, that line that it creates across your horizon, will only get bigger when the atmosphere gets worse.
What's incredible is that this point right here completely debunks some of the best evidences that have been put forward for the globe, like the quote unquote sunsets and the way that the stars kind of dome around us, right? The fact is that optics is not as black and white as they make it seem in the mainstream, right? It's actually pretty nuanced. But none of these different factors that have been admitted to exist, have been tested out, have even been measured in some cases, are taken into account in any of the globe Earth math whatsoever.
Correct. Yeah, and this is, you can explain it before even getting into the specifics of how perspective is non-Euclidean, and everyone treats it as if it's Euclidean. Euclidean, of course, being straight lines, non-Euclidean not being that, in really rudimentary terms. And it's been proven with quite a few experiments that our perspective is hyperbolic and elliptical, depending on the distance, the conditions, the height, etc. But even without that, just draw a straight line from your eyes. You know, say you have a 30-foot tall boat, you're 6 feet above the water. The bottom of that boat's going to hit that line of sight vanishing point before the top of it. Very simple stuff. And then in the bottom of the atmos is more dense, which means the light's going to be absorbed faster in the more dense medium. Just like if I shoot a laser through the air or a laser through the water, you're not going to be able to see the laser from as far in the water because the water's more dense, called attenuation. So, and then that's one that you get is they'll say, oh, well, there's not even a flat earth model. I don't know what it is. That's why I'm here. If that's why you're here, you're in the learning process. You're nowhere close to being able to debate it. You should just be listening. Right? Yeah. And then the next thing I get when I ask, wait, can you even still man the flat earth position, whether it's specific subject or just in general? They'll say, it doesn't make sense. I don't agree with it. It doesn't make sense. That's irrelevant. That's what a still man is. If you're still manning someone else's position, it's a given that you don't agree with them because they're on the other side of the debate. I can still man the globe and I think it's ridiculous. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So people
That's-
conflate that a lot, right? Like they conflate when you ask them to still man the flag position, they're like, well, what they say about the sunsets don't make sense. That doesn't matter. That's what the debate's for. That's not the same thing. You should be able to still man it. This is what you're always going to hear is them saying, well, flat earthers don't even agree. You guys don't have a model. And there is no earth model, of course, in that I don't understand it. I don't think it makes sense.
Well, there's no mainstream agreed upon physics model either, so they're gonna have to get over it.
Yeah, I mean, modeling is just an attempt to kind of visualize and describe mathematically different phenomena. All right, so now we have another very popular one. Appeal to majority, also called an appeal to consensus or argumentum ad populum. So this is an argument for an unproved conclusion based on the beliefs of a large group of people. Example, 7 billion people on the earth, or 7 billion people believe the earth's a ball, but you think you're right. So this is obviously ridiculous. And I am working with some people to do some homeschool curriculum and stuff and children's books. And this can be taught to a child, right? So
It's lonely at the top.
yeah, it's very obvious. That's why I like to say truth is not typically popular, and what's popular is not true. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what everyone thinks. Even if you spill over into a moral argument, was slavery moral because a lot of people used to think it was? Or how is that some type of parameter for truth?
Yeah, if we asked 1,000 7-year-olds if Santa Claus was real, and 990 of them said yes, does that mean Santa Claus is real?
Exactly. And there's another one that I don't have on here that this kind of spill over into with this analogy. Let's leave all the tedious disagreement out of this, but heat causes water to boil. Now, what is heat? Is it really pressure mediation that's the primary causal agent? Well, isn't heat intrinsically electric? Can't you change different variables? There's more, blah, blah, blah. The point is, you can make water boil with heat. So, if I say heat causes water to boil, and someone says, prove it. And then I say, everyone knows that heat causes water to boil. That isn't a good argument. Okay, that's an appeal to consensus. That's a fallacy. But this brings in something called the fallacy. Now, what will happen is you'll have to call out a globe proponent for fallacy so often, they'll end up saying, that's the fallacy, thinking that if you just always argue about fallacies, that's not what the fallacy is, though. The fallacy is the improper assumption that someone's conclusion is wrong just because their argument was fallacious. So let's go back to the water example. So if I say heat causes water to boil, someone challenges it, and then they're like, how do you know that? Prove it. And I say, everyone knows that heat causes water to boil. That's an appeal to majority. It doesn't matter what everyone thinks they know. That doesn't prove it. But my conclusion is true, right? Heat does cause water to boil. So I can have the correct conclusion, but not a proper argument. So the assumption that since someone's using a fallacy, that must mean their conclusion is wrong, that is a fallacy. It's called the fallacy. Just so you guys understand, you may end up hearing the fallacy as a defense mechanism. Anyway, and I think everyone understands this concept, right? Like, obviously, it doesn't matter what a group of people think, even if we dip off into the heliocentric paradigm. Their entire paradigm has thought things across the board as consensus many times and had to change it, right? So
Many times.
exactly. So obviously that doesn't even make sense in their own paradigm. They used to think, we're tucked away in a little corner of the universe and everything expanded from a single point in a Big Bang, which means the center of the universe is where the Big Bang started. We're way over here in the corner. So when we look out in space, we're going to see movement in all directions everywhere because we're just insignificant. So we're going to see blue shift, red shift. We're going to see it moving away towards us, to the left, to the right, because it's all moving relative to that center point of the Big Bang, and we're all the way over here. So everyone believed that because that's like the logical conclusion if there was a Big Bang and we're tucked away. But then they didn't see that. So they unanimously shifted over, changed the entire consensus to say, It's going to look like you're in the center no matter where you are in the universe, and it's an illusion. Right? So obviously, if we were to appeal to the majority the first time, then even in the heliocentric paradigm, that wouldn't have worked. So this is a very simple concept, but it is the number one thing you're going against, even if people don't say it. People are afraid to not be a part of the majority.
And just recently, they're saying that the universe, there's some people, some people saying it was published, but that doesn't really mean anything anymore nowadays. But they said that the universe is pretty much static and flat. The universe itself is flat. It's not like we believed it to be before, and it's pretty much like static. It's not. Yeah, they're trying to come up with ways. They say it's an illusion that it's moving.
Yeah.
It was a really weird article. Yeah, and when science has to use words like illusion, something's wrong. They're just pulling at straws. I think most of the articles nowadays are just there to fill stuff in. That's
how you know it's unfalsifiable.
And that is the big key, bro. Like, that's what I'm wanting to wrap this all up emphasizing is the unfalsifiability. It's insane. That's basically our religion, but all right, let's move on to the next one real fast. So we have another popular one. Now, for a lot of flat earthers, this is like basic stuff, right? But dude, the vast majority of the public does not understand this. They don't. And even people that have been in this conversation for years that defend the globe, they don't understand this. I show these slides at the beginning of my debates, and then they proceed to use all of them anyway. So this is, if you want to know how to debate, a bunch of people are like, can I pay you to jump on Skype with you or Zoom with you and you teach me some of this or how to talk to my family? This is what you need to know. You just need to learn the fallacies. So, appeal to authority. The argument that because a perceived authority believes something to be true, it must be true. All scientists agree the Earth is a globe. So obviously this is fallacious, and we can give all kinds. First of all, here's the easiest way to refute the nonsense of appeal to authority. What if two authorities disagree?
Which one's more popular?
It's so stupid. Justin Johnson, thank you for the $20 super chat on YouTube again. It's greatly appreciated, brother. So yeah, that's probably the most efficient way to point out how stupid that is. It's like, oh, okay, well, since the authority says it must be true, well, what if the two authorities with the same exact credentials disagree? Who's true? Obviously, this isn't a parameter. This isn't like a set of parameters we can find truth with.
We're dealing with people who have never read The Emperor's New Clothes.
Yeah, dude.
That's where the emperor goes around telling everybody that he has a new wardrobe, but he's actually just naked.
Yeah, exactly.
And all the people tell him how beautiful his clothes are. Then a little child comes up and goes, "Hey, man, you're naked.
Look at how great this mathematical theory is. General relativity. Wow."
You know what's so funny? It's basically like they're slowly admitting here and there, like, I think we can kind of see his butt. Ooh, I think we can kind of see his ankles, and like in different compartmentalized admissions, like, oh, I think I kind of see his torso. And we're over here like, he's naked. Like he's not wearing clothes, you goobers. So yeah, this is obviously a stupid one, but you'll get this one a lot. And this is intellectually lazy way out, just to think that other people have done it for you. And since the authority says it. The funniest part about this, and if anyone's been keeping up with some of my debates or anything for like the last 2 years, I switched my tactic a bit to where I start pulling over their hostile witnesses. Right? And it's his second one on the show. Yeah, Cami, I read both of them off. So thank you for both super chats, Justin. I started pointing out, like, oh, well, here's what Einstein said. Well, here's what Newton said. Right? Like, here's what Stephen Hawking said. Here's what Arthur Eddington said. Because
they don't like that.
Yeah, because they misrepresent them. So the irony of them appealing to authority, but then having to misrepresent them is wild. and they get so triggered. All of a sudden, their authority doesn't matter. Now, I'm not appealing to their authority. I'm just saying the current model still uses relativity. This is what it is. Right.
What baffles me is that the Globers usually I can get them to agree that the government is not the most competent agency that has ever existed, regardless if you want to assign like motive or whatever. But with that being said, and we have the government controlled school systems, I mean, why is it surprising that they're messing up the science that is being told, right? They're not the scientists, right? They're just government officials. So, I mean, when you actually look at what the scientists are saying and you see that it's not lining up with what the teachers are being told to teach, I mean, it should be pretty obvious to see what's going on.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, everyone smash the like button while we're still on YouTube, please. We got 300 watching, 100 thumbs up. Everyone just take a second and go smash the thumbs up, or we're just going to change to a black screen and I'll sit here in silence. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. All right. So these are basic ones. Here's an important one though. Poisoning the well. So the poisoning the well fallacy is where you use ad hominem attacks to preemptively discredit the opponent. An example: all flat earthers are science-denying religious conspiracy theorists. This is, if anyone saw the debate I had with Conspiracy Cats, his entire opener was a poisoning the well fallacy. Witsit thinks giants are real. Witsit thinks Atlantis was real. Witsit's this crazy, thinks the Illuminati runs things. Like, just ad hominem to preemptively discredit. Witsit lies. Witsit da-da-da-da-da. Witsit's a grifter and a con man and does this for money. Before the actual specifics of the debate happen, that's called poisoning the well. And it's actually... again, sadly, a very effective tactic.
Yeah, it works. It does work. That's
Yeah,
why
it's
you have
crazy.
to call it out as soon as it happens.
Right. So the fallacy thing may seem tedious to some people, but it's extremely important. The reason we have them is because it can make a conversation so convoluted, it's easy to get confused and deceived because it can be convincing. So hopefully...
And some of them out there are very good at it.
It's also
Right.
important that we address them quickly because there's something called mental fatigue. And I think that's another big part of the tactics being deployed out here is they want to wear the audience down by having you have to go through all these ridiculous points. So the quicker and more concise you can dismantle them, the better.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's a very good point. It is what it is. Your opponent dictates how often you have to bring up fallacies. That's not your fault. And again, you should employ this with loved ones. If you're talking to someone about the earth and they start bringing stuff up, just explain calmly, well, that's what's called an appeal to authority. That's what's called a straw man, right? And just explain to them why fallacies are important. Believing in giants in Atlantis gives you more credibility. I have to agree. Dave Weiss, you are correct. All right. Let's see what else we got here. This is probably the most important one. So we have begging the question fallacy. Now that's an informal fallacy. Again, meaning it lacks sound reasoning. If you don't have sound reasoning, you have nothing. Right? So when an argument's premise assumes the truth of the conclusion, for example, the globe model says the sun goes beneath the earth, so sunsets prove the globe model. This is the number one thing that they use. And there's also something called affirming the consequent, right? And it's like, if the earth's a globe, then the sun will set beneath the curve of the earth, which is the horizon. Since the sun appears to set below the horizon, therefore, the earth is a globe. That is called an affirming the consequent or begging the question. Do you guys agree this is probably, when you ask for evidence that the earth is a globe, void of logically fallacious reasoning, you're always going to run into this fallacy pretty much. Do you guys agree that this is the number one fallacy they use when they claim globe evidence?
Oh, yeah. That's all they have.
100%. It's invoked with every celestial observation.
which is pretty much all they have. If you pull the sky from them, they have nothing. I mean, anything. So I can just run through them, right? Geodetic surveying. It begs the question that the Earth's a sphere. It takes plane survey, it stitches it together, it then uses what's called a least squares method, which is an averaging methodology that they then narrow it down to a predetermined window based on the spherical model values, right? The dimensions of the spherical model, the ellipsoid model. And then they apply a weighted mean, meaning they apply different weights to the equation. So if you get a measure, if say that your model predicts a 7, and then you narrow the window down to any measurements 5 through 10. So if you have 11 and up or 4 and down, you just dismiss them, act like it didn't happen. Then you take all measurements between the 5 and 10 window that you determined at the beginning, and then you apply different weights to them. So if you have a measurement of 10, it gets the way less weight than the measurements of 7, because 7 is where you want the number to be. So you get a weighted mean by applying more weight. So basically, if you added a weight of 2.0, then that would mean 2 measurements of 10 are equivalent to 1 measurement of 7, even though there's actually just 1 of each. It's just a way to cook the books. So hopefully that made sense. And everything that they do is begging the question, because if you just have to take the globe model to make your evidence, you're not actually providing evidence. You're just begging the question. If the Earth's a globe, this is how we would explain the stars, the planets, the sun, the moon, geodetic surveying, reciprocal zenith angle, sea level. All of this is, they just beg the question. It's pretty much all they have. You should definitely familiarize yourself with begging the question fallacy and affirming the consequence. Should be the first ones you learn, and train yourself to spot them, because that's pretty much all the globe has. I honestly cannot think of anything that can be proposed for the globe without doing that. Hence me being a flat earther. So have you guys ever heard like an alleged evidence for the globe that doesn't just require the assumption the Earth's a globe?
No, I can honestly say no. Yeah, I looked. I looked way before Dave came out with this thing. That's why I'm a flat earther. I mean, I didn't want to be a flat earther. When I saw the curvature formula, I was like, well, that can't be right. I was thinking maybe it's a bigger sphere, or, I was searching for any reason to hold on to the globe. I didn't want to believe, that the Earth was flat, and that I was dumb enough to fall for that. Yeah, it was a hard thing to let go.
I'll give you somebody's best shot that they gave, which I thought was funny. Completely unconfirmed, mind you, but it was claimed that from the point of view of a satellite, you could shoot radio waves, and then actually get a direct measurement of the Earth's curvature, and that you would have to assume that that there's no funny business going on with the satellites, of course. I don't really see that as assuming the Earth's a globe up front, but it does assume again that assuming that the data is legit, you're having to appeal to the authority, to the story of Narnia in order to get the evidence. So I'd have to say no.
Yeah, that begs the question of the place the satellites are and stuff like that. But that one's even worse for them, because they claim that there's an ionosphere, and that any radio transmissions below 40 megahertz reflects off the ionosphere. So for one, it would have to be higher than that frequency. And then when we shoot radio waves out on the Earth up to 100, 110 megahertz, and they can go up to almost 3,000 miles, and they should be blocked at 200 miles. They can't invoke the ionosphere because it's way over 40, but they still try to. They say, oh, well, there are little clouds inside of it, maybe inside the ionosphere, that reflect it, and they come up with everything they can. So I don't even
pockets.
It's going to be a channel.
It does require
ion channel.
Yeah, it also requires the assumption you just pointed out, which is that the medium. Because if you're looking at a radio transmission, what you do is you take the duration, how long it takes to get back to you, and that's where you get a distance, right? It's how long it takes. Obviously, radio transmissions, they quote unquote propagate. I'm trying not to divert too much into the fact that it's not actually traveling. We'll leave that on the side for a second, but like, it obviously is different in different mediums, right? So if how long it takes to go through a certain medium is different than another medium. So if you're just assuming what the medium is, to then get your duration, then get your distance, well, then you are still actually, you're begging the question specifically of the medium or lack thereof of space. So that is still technically a begging the question, but maybe not specific to the sphere aspect of it. Although you would end up having to even invoke different convexity rates to interpret the data based on its distribution after hitting the surface and blah, blah, blah. But I think one of the best ways to break down a begging the question is when we say, can you provide evidence of gas pressure without a container? And then their answer is the atmosphere. Right? So,
using the very thing that you're questioning.
Exactly.
Is your answer.
Exactly. The very thing in question. It's crazy, man. So if we're like, well, we know we have a gradient on the Earth. We have gas pressure on the Earth. We call it the atmos. People say the atmosphere. So, all empirical evidence shows us that you need a container for gas pressure. Can you provide any empirical evidence that you can have gas pressure without a container? And then they just say the atmosphere. It's so funny. It's like all they have. It's like all they have for that answer. So, all right, cool. Begging the question is a very important one. I think it's pretty much going to be spotted in almost everything that they invoke. So just learn those. It's begging the question, affirming the consequent. Point those out succinctly, quickly, and you will be undefeated in Flat Earth debate. We have a shifting the burden of proof fallacy, which is flipping the burden to the person who denies or questions the assertion being made. My favorite example of this is prove the images from space are fake. So when they bring up the images and they say, look, this is the Earth from space, or these are planets from space, or whatever, and we say, look, images can be faked. I could show you an image of Sasquatch. Turns out it was just my buddy in a costume. Do you have to believe the picture because I show it to you? Or they can make a model of the Earth in a studio with specific lighting and take videos or images of it. And that doesn't mean that they're actually out in space. It can easily be faked. So I've seen them use cloning tools. They admit that it's CGI and composite, and they stitch it together, and it's coming from a non-credible source. So we don't believe it. We deny it. We challenge the assertion that this is a picture of the Earth from a vacuum of space. And they then respond with, you have the burden to prove those images are fake. This is a shifting the burden of proof fallacy. It's a perfect example of it, right? It's shifting the burden over to the person who denies or questions the assertion being made. This happens all the time. All the time. So obviously you don't have to prove that it's not. First of all, you don't prove that things are fake necessarily, and you don't have the burden to prove anything. They're making the positive claim.
A softer version of that fallacy is when a glober makes an assertion, and then when you refute it, or they don't understand the refutation, they simply ask you to explain how it would work in the flat Earth. Then, well, if this isn't how it works, then how does it work in the flat Earth? Then,
exactly. And dude, we get that all the time. It's crazy. It's like somehow what you think remains true until I replace it, which is why when I first got in this debate online, after Bob talked me into jumping online, I quickly coined the phrase, as I saw it was clearly needed, like falsification is independent of replacement. And dude, I've heard that's word salad and all this weird, but it's a very simple concept. something doesn't remain true until it's replaced. If I show you unequivocally that something is false, and then you're like, but wait, then how does it work? And if I don't have an answer, then somehow it becomes true again. Like, that's so weird. Yeah, that one's crazy. That's definitely one of the number one.
And they use that with the sky all the time. If we can't explain what the luminaries are, then space has to be real.
Guys, just
Exactly.
tell us who your parents are already.
Yes, that's one of my favorite ones. Shout out to Jeran for that. The adopted parents one. It's like, yo, I found out my parents are actually my adopted parents. I was adopted, and they're like, no, until you know who your real parents are, those are your real parents. Like, okay. So,
Oh, big shout out. $5 super chat over on Rockfin by Unexplored Plane. Thank you.
nice. Does it say anything?
Nope. Just a tip. GLOBEBUSTERS received a tip.
Oh yeah, yeah. Thank you, Unexplored Plane. Much love, and we will shoot over to Rockford maybe halfway through. So we got maybe 30 more minutes on YouTube. You guys cool with that?
Absolutely.
All right, cool. I don't know how many more I have on here. Okay, that's it. And we can obviously keep going because pretty much everything that happens in this debate is a fallacy. So one of the number one fallacies, of course, is a red herring fallacy. Right. So I'm sure you run into that a lot, huh, Troubling?
Yeah, red herrings, where you will make a very specific claim. A perfect example would be when we bring up the positive evidence for the flat Earth or for the lack of curvature, and instead of addressing any of that, they will just there's so many different ways they can take it. But pretty much anytime they don't address your argument directly is a red herring.
Yeah, exactly. And the most common one is it appears as if it's relevant, but it's actually with the intention to divert or obfuscate. So, like, say we're talking about sunsets and stuff, and then all of a sudden, they're like, it's impossible the sun disappears from the bottom up if the Earth is flat. And then you explain, well, the horizon is an apparent location. It's a convergence point, a vanishing point of your perspective. You explain the line of sight thing and how, of course, the things on the bottom are closer, so disappear first. And then they respond with, why doesn't it change angular size then? As if that's relevant to the actual point, because it looks like it could be, because we're talking about the sun, a sunset on flat Earth, right? So it appears to be part of it, but it's not. It's actually a deceptive tactic to avoid the conclusion. What you're going to find is that they always run away once you get to the conclusion point. Once it's time to concede, that's when you get the red herring.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, it's just like it is in sales and marketing. It's when you get down to asking for the order, that's when people are going to give you the objection. So this is a great way to avoid the audience. It's really not even mostly for the person that you're debating with, right? A lot of times there's an audience, and so it diverts their attention from reaching the proper conclusion of your point.
Yeah, and this is this is something flat earthers really need to work on, even me, because sometimes you're just you're like, well, we can answer all your questions, and so we just start taking the bait. So we just address the diversion, right? We address the obfuscation, address the red herring, and really we shouldn't do that, because that's intellectually dishonest. If you have to change the subject once it's time for you to concede, you're just being dishonest, and we shouldn't really take the bait, right? We shouldn't move around. These are where people should start being no longer communicated with, right? Like, we won't bring up any specific names, but there are some frequent globers that run on the internet and stalk this conversation, and they do this all the time. And
yeah, this is like their bread and butter. See, I love it when you have the debates with the honest people, especially the ones that are highly educated, and they do concede points, and they are like, wow, that's really interesting. But the ones that we were talking about, the ones that do this, yeah, I don't have time for them anymore. At first I did, but once you see the same answer over and over and over again, this happened to me a long time ago. I was having a discussion with one of these people, and and it wasn't even like live or anything. This was after show hours, and we talked about, even forget what topic it was, something to do with the sky for like an hour, and I explained to him exactly what, you know, how it could work this way, and he agreed and everything. And then the very next day, I see him on a show talking about the same thing with someone else, and pretending like he had never heard that before. They didn't bring it up, so he didn't bring it up.
He wasn't ready to divert from the script.
Yeah, exactly. And that just showed me how dishonest some of these people are. And yeah, I mean, when people can pull them apart, when they have all these fallacies down, like Austin and Skylar here, then I say go at them and get them, and so you can show people how, ridiculous they are. But when you don't know all the fallacies and everything, they can make you almost look foolish by the way that they ask their questions.
Definitely have had me questioning things in my earlier days, right? Getting tripped up on some of the fallacies. So especially with like the more confidence that comes with it. And it's not our fault. Like the reason why that happens is because people unfortunately do make a lot of decisions based on emotion, right? So when people are confident, they convey that confidence, even if it's, something completely wrong.
Shout out to Justin Johnson for another $20 super chat. Thank you so much, brother. Very generous. Yeah, like I'll show. Here's an example. So this is a video that's going to show basically the kinematic equivalence of geocentrism. And let's do this. Maybe it'll restart. So people will say, like, for example, if you're like, can you show any exclusive evidence that the Earth is moving around the sun? Now, obviously, this is showing a globe, which is ridiculous, but that's not the point. So if you see here, you can show them that even in your own paradigm, everything works the same kinematically, as in how bodies move in relation to each other. So, like, do you have any exclusive evidence that the Earth moves around the sun? Well, the way the planets move. What? That's how we came up with the heliocentric idea, was looking at what people call planets and how they move and then making the model. So you're just affirming the consequence. You're begging the question. And, dude, I'll be honest. I think that there is nothing that exists from their paradigm that doesn't require a fallacy. I don't know. I don't think there's anything.
I think it's designed to be that way, to be honest. Kind of like that whole deal when you're starting to wonder, like, why would everybody start teaching their kids about Santa Claus and things like that? And I came to the conclusion that, well, you can shake the trust, that kids have in their parents. When you have this on a huge degree, they have us not trusting our senses whatsoever. So it's just a great way to keep us scrambled so that the control stays in the hands of the few.
Yeah, man. This is a depiction here. We're showing like the angular momentum of the entire cosmos moving around the Earth would cause everything to move around the Earth. And obviously, we don't believe in these solid objects that are giant masses or whatever, but I was just throwing that visualizer in there for you guys. But I think what I think this is so important is because we were talking about, like, yeah, these bad actors that frequent this conversation, they're kind of, they want to mentally exhaust you in the audience. They want to obfuscate and drown the conversation in diversion, and they want to just muddy the waters, make it very hard to come to some type of logical conclusion, and basically just waste your time. And that's what red herrings do a lot, right? But you're going to run into this with your family and friends as well, because such an immense amount of cognitive dissonance is tied to this conversation. That's been my experience. I don't know. What about you guys? Like, do you guys run into the obfuscation thing even with people you know?
Oh, yeah. And then, I can keep my cool a lot better when I know they're being genuine people. And then I can explain, because I know a lot of how the physics works and, your eyes and just different things. So when I start explaining this to them, it always ends up with, what difference does it make?
Yeah,
And
when
that's the one that when it comes to friends and family that just can't let go of it, they can't really debate me on the physics. So they don't. They always just end up saying, you know, what difference does it make? How is that going to affect my life? All those same has nothing to do with what we're talking about, the actual shape of the earth. Now they want to get into emotions and things like that. And it's like, well, that's not what we're talking about. But they just can't admit it, though. It's
I've
weird.
I've actually had a really interesting experience over the last several years in these conversations with my family. It went from why can't, the usual fallacies that we've just, went over for the last hour or so, where they're just saying, well, why can't I see England with a telescope? Why does the sun never set and things like that? And, I know that these are things that they've just heard from their friends and through the grapevine. But when COVID started happening, and everybody started getting a different opinion, then people started really taking a different approach. And that's all I really can say about it on this side. But yeah, I think that a lot has changed over the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, for sure. But like from my experience, man, like with even like family members, they just want to start asking you every question that pops in their head, and they never acknowledge the conclusion of their first point. And the problem with that is that they're never gonna grasp it because they're never allowing themselves to see the conclusion. So you could do that for 5 days straight, and they'll never wake up.
Well, to be honest with you, when I'm with my family, I'm really, really comfortable with them, and I feel no shame about employing the salesman marketing tactics of closing, which basically is just when I present an argument, I don't let people wiggle out of it. So when, they might try to bring up something else, and it's different when you're online. You got to be, somewhat nice and cordial. And when you're doing it for hours on end, you can get exhausted and can slip up here and there. But when I'm just dealing with like a 15, 20-minute conversation, I'm just addressing a real specific point. I mean, that's usually how I'll do it, is just be one thing really specific. And like Zach said, it'll usually be something to do with the physics behind it and a proof of what they thought of is a fallacy for sure. And you can usually do that with a comparison. Austin, you're great with the metaphor with the unicorns. When you start bringing up that, well, by that line of logic, then this would also be true, and get them to see how ridiculous that is. And that's a great way to start breaking through that programming.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the unicorns one is good with the little visualizations, and then the person opens the book, and but like I just think, because that's the number one thing I get, right? Like people, they think it's entertaining to hear you talk to some of these people and debate them, and they learn that way sometimes, or they think it's entertaining. But the number one thing I get is like, I want to wake up my brother, I want to wake up my mom, I want to wake up my wife, and I'm not able to get through to them. Well, I can almost assure you that what's happening is when you do begin to have the conversation with them, they're constantly moving the goalpost and changing the subject, and you're kind of letting it go because it's someone you love, and it's like whatever you want to, and they have questions, so you want to answer all their questions, but you have to show them like, wait, before we move on to the next question, can we both agree on the conclusion of the first one? Because we'll never get to the end of it if we don't do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think red herring fallacies are a death to any type of intellectual conclusion.
I completely agree with that. I completely agree. There was one last thing that I wanted to say, but I just forgot what it was. So,
Well,
how dare you?
I know when I'm speaking with religious people, I like to bring up the point that, Satan just simply means to oppose in Hebrew, to oppose the creator. And everything we are taught, everything in the heliocentric model at least, and almost everything we're taught, is in direct contradiction of how it actually is. It's, when they say, what does Satan want to do? Well, he wants to take God's creation, and make you think 100% or 180 degrees in the opposite direction of what it actually is. And that's why that's all they have is fallacies, because it's gotten to the point now, this cosmology of heliocentrism has gotten so, poisoned that it almost, it is really 100% in, or 180 degrees in opposition of what the creation actually is. The whole globe model is, the exact opposite.
Sorry to cut you off, Zach. You did a lot of pausing, so I didn't know when you were done. I didn't want Austin to kick off.
Yeah, I'm bad about that. My apologies.
No, you're fine. It's actually funny because what I was going to say was that a part of the issue with having these conversations is that because of the high level of stress and disillusion that people are living in day to day, it actually puts people in this state of fight or flight, which basically means that when you're engaging in these conversations that they see as trivial, they're basically just waiting for their next turn to talk, right? They're not actually listening to what you're saying, which is why it's really important to do, like Austin said, make them steelman your position, isolate the actual objection, make sure that they understand the argument. That way, if they do disagree with you, there's actually a legit reason that they do disagree, or everybody else can see it for what it is.
Yeah, that's actually another fallacy I recently learned about. It's called invincible ignorance fallacy. And that's where they don't even listen to what you're saying. They just wait to speak. And they think there's no way they can be wrong, so whatever you say can't matter, and they're just waiting to speak. They're not listening to anything that you're saying. That's called the invincible ignorance fallacy. It's also called pig-headedness fallacy. And we get into that a lot, where if you should just point that out to the person, and if they keep doing it, it's like, you got to chalk it up. I don't have all day to just talk. That's really just very disrespectful, to be honest. Right? So, yeah, that's an interesting fallacy I didn't really know the name of, but it is a specific fallacy.
Big shout out to John Keeley over on Rockfin for the $5 chat tip. Thank you, sir. Didn't write anything in, just the $5 tip.
Oh, nice. Obliged. So I see that Sean, and it might be Al. Okay, I don't know. $10 tip. Much love from Angela Baby Carson. Thank you for the $10 tip. And then, like you said, we have Unexplored Plane. Thank you for the $5 tip. And then John Keeley, thank you for the $5 tip on Rockfin. Yeah, so there are many more fallacies, obviously, that you can get into. Troubling, you kind of touched on the all or nothing fallacy, right? Where if you're like, you have to correct them, or you have to cite something to show the evidence that's been established with experiment or whatever it is. And once it refutes their point, their response will be something like, does that person think the Earth's flat? You're invoking globers to make your point.
Another version of that all or nothing fallacy is going to be when they say, well, I'm going to need to see your flat Earth model that explains every single phenomena, real or perceived, in the universe.
Yeah, exactly. Which is, dude, that's just so funny. It's like, if you can't explain every single thing, then the Earth can't be flat. And of course, the ironic part is a globe model can't explain everything. Like, not even close. Not even theoretically.
Wait till we just start calling the really troublesome things paradoxes. Then it's game over.
Yeah, we'll just say it's a paradox or an anomaly, and then we're good. All right, let me try to play this video. So, yeah, what do you guys? What we can do now is, I was thinking we have another 20 minutes where we switch over to Rockfin, and then we can cover some more stuff we can't talk about here. But anyone in the chat that thinks that there's a really frequent argument you guys hear from Globers that we didn't mention, throw it in the chat, whether that be Rockfin or YouTube, and then we'll kind of address them and show the fallacies inside that argument. So if you guys want to just type like quote unquote arguments or evidence that comes from the globe, we'll kind of address them, because what I found is all you have to do is ask them, can you provide any empirical evidence that verifies the globe model is true, void of logically fallacious reasoning? That's it. They can't. They cannot do that. Let me open that. So we can show this as well. I just saw Karen be in the chat, so let me see if this will work. Bang.
Another big shout out to Justin Johnson, $20 tip in Rockfin again. Thank you, sir.
Justin Johnson, thank you for the tip, brother. Much love for all the generous support today.
Oh, I see a big green screen.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go ahead and shout this out. Let me transition. All right. So shout out to Karen B in the chat. International Flat Earth Conference in Las Vegas, Flattoberfest 2023. And here is the website, flatearthfestivals.com. And I think you can also go to flattoberfest.com. So this is Saturday and Sunday of October 21st and 22nd. It's in Vegas.
Vegas, baby.
Which should be very interesting and exciting. So now we can like link up with a bunch of the people on the West Coast. So you guys should definitely go grab your tickets. There's a buy tickets here option right here at the top. So yeah, and Karen dropped the link in the chat. So shout outs to Flattoberfest, which is always a very good experience. We say this every time, but it's like if you guys haven't experienced it, you definitely should try to, because it's kind of you can't really explain it unless you experience it.
Yeah, when you're there, the best way I can explain it, it's the family reunion that you want to go to. You know, there isn't anybody there that's really you don't want to sit down and have a conversation with. And this one, there's going to be, I mean, all the things are lifted. We have people coming over from the UK and places like that. And I've already heard some of the numbers, and I was already overwhelmed by how many people are coming. So yeah, get your tickets. I don't know how many that this place holds, but it's getting up. This is going to be an awesome one.
Well, I will say one of the things that will make it more interesting for sure will be if I can manage to make it out there to the West Coast with all of you guys. It's going to be awesome. We have a GoFundMe set up right now, thanks to the legend Jeremy Bird. So if you guys want to show your support, I have it in the chat if anybody wants to drop it in the GLOBEBUSTERS YouTube or Rockfin. That'd be awesome. We have just over $1,000 in that, so there's been a ton of love and support in there. Lots of shout out to all you legends who have already contributed. Looking forward to seeing you guys out there.
Cool. I'll grab it. It's in the Skype chat.
Yep.
Cool.
Brett, I see your question. We'll answer that one when we go to Rockfin. I'm going to, yeah. I don't want to not answer that one, but yeah, when we go to Rockfin, we'll get more into that kind of stuff.
Here we got commercial sound and video. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. There cannot be a lie that big. I don't need to look into it. It's too stupid. Okay. Yeah.
MK Ultra.
The MK Ultra fallacy. Yeah, I mean, again, this is called an appeal to incredulity. It's the lie being so big that you can't understand it, you can't grasp it, therefore it can't be true. You can't even grasp the idea that something like that could ever take place or could ever happen. It doesn't personally make sense to you, therefore it can't be true. You can't personally understand or grasp the magnitude of it. That's called an appeal to incredulity, which is just ignorant. Like if I told you that way back in the day that you could just pull energy out of the air, like that's magic. You can't just pull energy out of the air. What are you talking about? So therefore, it can't be true.
Yeah, and Well, at least what we're told, his story, when people did things like that back in the day, they usually end up being stoned to death for being a witch or a wizard, something like that.
Common people can't wield that much power. You know that.
Yeah.
Let's see if there's any more here. I saw someone put, there's no electrostatics in a Faraday cage, quote unquote. Of course, that's not a globe argument. We're kind of talking more about what people say when they try to defend the globe, but of course, there is always electrostatics, even in a Faraday cage. No Faraday cage can attain zero, plus the objects themselves inside of it are literally held together by the Faraday cage, and it still has electrostatic induction and transference from the medium to the object within the Faraday cage. The Faraday cage material itself is electrostatic, and even in a vacuum chamber or a Faraday cage, you have an electric and magnetic constant. So the objects themselves, which means their weight, their quote-unquote mass, really just their quantified matter and their density are all intrinsically electrostatic. It's always interacting with the medium. Seemingly, the density and buoyancy relationship between the object and the medium is intrinsically electrostatic. And I think that's actually the cause of that pressure mediation is the electrostatic nature of both.
Yeah, I'm dropping a link in the chat to a video I did where I show that the electric field is still in a Faraday cage, and it does change when you raise it up in altitude. The electrostatics inside the Faraday cage increase as well.
Nice. You dropped that in the chat?
Yeah, I'm going to right now. I'm just
shout out
to
that will receive no rebuttal.
And I did it live.
Yeah, of course. You'll never hear about it. Shout out to Daryl Davis, $20 super chat on YouTube. Thank you so much. Austin, you are crushing. Thank you, brother. You are crushing. And thank you for supporting the show. It's greatly appreciated. Again, if you guys, we only have about 12 more minutes before we switch over. If you guys have any of, more so, if you guys hear something from family members or friends or frequently from people that defend the globe, and you're not sure how to break down what fallacies are in the argument, kind of just quote unquote it in the chat and we'll help address exactly where all the fallacies are inside of it.
Big shout out to Daryl Davis here on YouTube for the $20 super chat. Austin, you are crushing. Yes, you are, brother.
Thanks, bro. I just tried that. Yeah, shout out to Daryl Davis. Much love, brother. Let's see here.
Is it too late to shout out Daryl Davis?
Hey, yeah, maybe we should shout out Daryl Davis. I think maybe you guys already know most of what they say is fallacious. I mean, because obviously most of it's pointing at the sky and begging the question, almost all of it. And the funny part of that, of course, is what we see in the sky is what was used to make the globe. So to be like, oh look, the globe model matches the sky. It's like, yeah, no, duh, that's how we made it. So that. And I think, well, and let's maybe end with this while we're on YouTube. It kind of goes back to what you were talking about, troubling, and this thing I've really been emphasizing lately. It's they need their belief to be unfalsifiable. So if you just ask them, hey, how can we falsify the globe? How can we falsify the globe model? They can't answer.
They will actually, the answer that I've gotten is, well, you can't falsify it because it's true.
Yeah, there you go. Just basically reassert the thing in question. And like, if you say, hey, how can we falsify the heliocentric model? They can't answer. And say, hey, how do we falsify the Big Bang model? They can answer. Now here, I'll give you a heads up. What you'll normally get is they'll state something that we already know to always happen. Because therefore, it's not a real way that can falsify it, right? So for example, we know what the planets do. They move in a cycle, in a reoccurring cycle. So if you say, can you provide any evidence or any idea of how we can falsify the heliocentric model? They'll be like, oh, the motion of the planets. What? We already know what the planets do. That's how we made the model. And that goes to show you the main problem here. They cannot even bring themselves to the mental state to actually consider, how can I test and or falsify this model? They haven't even made it to step one. That's why we're here. That's the first thing we did, obviously.
Well, yeah, and that's... Oh, go ahead, Skylar.
I was just going to say that's a huge step to take. If you can't falsify the model, then it's not science, right? It's a religion by definition.
Exactly. And it's usually like a blind belief. Like they don't even know what it is they believe. They just believe it. They just believe the model. So whatever it says, I believe that even though I don't know what it is. That's a blind belief. And if you can't articulate falsifiability, then it's a religion. It's a belief system built upon the doctrine of men, void of empirical evidence. And that's where you can just define empirical. And empirical means that it's observable, testable, repeatable, and falsifiable. Okay, so you cannot do these things with the current model. Let's give an example. So the globe model says that the radius of the Earth is 3,959 miles. Thus, the Earth should bend convexly at a rate roughly 8 inches per mile squared up to and even greater than 1,000 miles. So if we go make an observation under 1,000 miles, we can easily calculate the amount of obstruction that should be there. So we should only be able to see so far if this globe model is true. We go and consistently see significantly further than that. What did they say in return? They said refraction, and in fact, you can have a coefficient of 2 or more, meaning that the light can bend at a rate that's exactly the same as the curve of the Earth, so technically it can bend all the way around the Earth. That made the globe unfalsifiable again, right? Every one of their arguments does that.
Yeah, there was a study done not too long ago about the human psyche, and now they were saying I don't put a whole lot of credence into IQ tests, but they were saying people that were right around 70, I believe, maybe 80 and below, they have trouble imagining things that aren't in their paradigm. So if you ask them, did you have breakfast this morning? And they said yes. You say, well, how do you feel right now? And they're not hungry. Okay. Now imagine that you didn't have breakfast, and how do you feel? Their answer is, but I did have breakfast. It's not, okay, then I would be hungry, right? You would logically deduce, well, if I didn't eat, then I'm most likely going to be hungry. They can't even look that far ahead. They're stuck on, I did eat breakfast.
That's like a mental disorder.
Yeah, since they believe they know something, it's like they don't feel like they even have to, almost. But I think it's beyond that. It's not like a conscious decision they're making. They say they can't imagine if they didn't eat breakfast when they did. And that just blew my mind. Kind of shows why we have so much trouble with some of these people, getting them to think about a topic differently.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like the first thing we did. It's
not
crazy.
believe it, but just imagine it. Just, isn't that a sign of intelligence? Being able to look at everything logically and then logically deduce whether it's possible or not.
Being able to entertain two diametrically opposed ideas at the same time without going mad.
Yeah. I guess some people cannot do that. That really shed some light on why you can't get through with some people. And I don't believe it's the IQ thing of this or lower, this, I'm sure it's a spectrum just like everything else. Some people are really good at doing this while others are average, and then the below average, they can't. They just can't.
Well, keep in mind that there's an EWG report where people can check the contamination of their water, and lots of people are still cooking with that. So that's all I'll say.
Yeah, man, it's very interesting. The whole, every part of it has made it unfalsifiable, right? Like the heliocentric model says, okay, we should look out, see things going every which way. We're insignificant. We looked out, saw that everything moves around us. They said, oh, well, no matter where you are, it's going to look like you're in the center. Made it unfalsifiable. There is no center. First, they said there's a singularity. Everything expands out from that in a Big Bang. That didn't match the data. They changed it. Everywhere is going to look, there is the center. It's the center, and there is no center. Okay, now it's unfalsifiable. And that's what they did with everything, bro. The Michelson-Morley experiment. Okay, well, matter contracts, but you can never actually tell or directly detect it. Now it's unfalsifiable. So the globe model, the heliocentric model, needs everything to become unfalsifiable, which means it is by definition a religion.
Mm-hmm.
That's
That
very
is the
eye-opening.
definition. Yeah.
Michelson-Morley was so bad that they can't even properly outline the experiment and what it was meant to test.
Exactly. They say it was just about the ether, and in the title itself, it says the motion of the earth relative to the ether.
So,
Super chat
Willie,
from Justin Johnson.
Go ahead.
You think I can get a wrench, boss? I don't make all the executive decisions. But thank you for the $20 super chat. Justin Johnson. Very generous donations today.
Funding the operation. Wrench.
Willie Nanny asks, or he says, he hears this one a lot, I'm sure. It's not the most important thing in the world. You know, with all this stuff going on, you know, yeah. Why is it so important if the earth is flat or round? Well, it's not the fact that the earth is flat or round. That's the important part. If it was a globe and that's what it was, then that'd be fine. It's not like that aspect of it is the big deal. The big deal is that this is one of the lies that they've told us they cannot hide or sweep under the rug. You know, all these different things that have happened throughout time, all these, whatever you want to call them, I'm not going to start throwing them out here on YouTube, but we know what they are. These big events that get things to change or start wars, all these different things. They can hide that. They can go and clean up the rubble and ship it off to somewhere and blow it up again if they want to. All right? They can hide that from us. This is something they cannot hide. This is a huge, huge lie that they've told, that we can go out and check for ourselves, and it can never be hidden from us. We live upon it. We're in it. That's why it's so important to me. Because if you want to get people to wake up to all these other lies, then, you know, you have to wake them up with one that can't be swept away, can't be hidden.
It is the master key, in my opinion. You learn this one, and you learn the full depth of how deep the rabbit hole can go.
Yeah. And then you're willing now to look into other areas because you know you've been lied to on such a grand scale already that why not? Hey, why wouldn't they lie about this? If they lied about that, see, that's the mindset we need to get people into. And that's why this is such an important lie.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so in conclusion, before we switch over to Rockfin, basically, it's very important to familiarize yourself with logic, logical fallacies, learn them. It's worth studying them. It's going to help you in things significantly greater than just this one conversation. It's just a very valuable tool to understand, and wait, am I being fallacious? Am I being logical with how I'm making this decision or coming to this conclusion? Helps you efficiently sift through a lot of the nonsense. Obviously, it gives you a tool to teach your children how to think as opposed to being indoctrinated with regurgitation of what to think. It is one of the most important aspects of philosophy and logical deduction and just thinking properly with reason, sound reason. It is incredibly important. And when it comes to this, it is basically the secret weapon of this conversation, right? It's the silver bullet. They cannot handle being held to a standard of logical consistency. That's because the globe is not true. It is in fact falsifiable. We have falsified it. All purported evidence for the globe is intrinsically fallacious at its foundation. If you can learn these things, you can hold people's feet to the fire, and quickly you'll be able to demonstrate to your friends, your families, your loved ones, look, everything that you're saying, everything that you were taught, everything that you've read about the earth being a globe is intrinsically fallacious. It is inadmissible intellectually. It is no good. And this will also help you out with debates. Some people like to debate, some people do not. I think it is one of the most important aspects of society. It always has been. That's how we as a people come to conclusions. Ideas should be put in front of the public square, and then it should be debated. Basically, we've dismantled the globe model paradigm so much over the last 7 years or so that it's just resorted to pure fallacy. They've shifted the goalpost to a bunch of unfalsifiable claims. So just ask people, can you provide any empirical evidence that the earth is actually a globe without logically fallacious reasoning? If you know your fallacies, then you will be able to shut down everything they say and explain exactly why, and hold yourself to the same standard. Remain logically consistent. Don't use fallacies. And this will help you maneuver the waters much better. I think it's important. Also, the other point that we were making is it's important to be able to still man the other side of whatever debate you're having. So that goes for flat earthers when it comes to the globe as well. You should certainly by now know the globe position. You should know what their excuses are, their theoretical explanations are for each different phenomena that's going to come up in this conversation. And it's important to be able to still man the other side prior to claiming it's wrong, or then you're just baselessly doing so. Ask them to still man, point out the straw mans. If you cannot still man the other side, then you have no business talking about it. You haven't even entered the debate. And then maybe the most important part of all of it is emphasize the importance of falsifiability. If anyone's watching this and is new to the subjects, on the fence, still looking into it, really make sure you hone in on and understand the concept of falsifiability and realize they've shifted the goalposts, they being globe earth proponents, to such an egregious extent that at this point, every single one of their positions is unfalsifiable. The primary three excuses they use, their trinity, if you will, for this religion is gravity, refraction, and reference frames. And with this little trinity, they can dismiss anything and make anything possible and make it all unfalsifiable. So hopefully you guys will learn about that. Hopefully this was edifying for you guys, because it is for sure the most succinct and efficient way to go about it. I can give you maybe a list of 5 to 10 things that you can ask someone, and debate's over as soon as you ask them. I want to also read the final super chat here. Participating in a lie is a fool's quest. Live in reality versus imagination. The official narratives are based on lies. There is no truth in them. I would have to concur. Thank you for the $10 super chat, John Zimmer. Thank you for supporting the channel. We're going to move over to Rockfin now. Do you guys have anything you want to say to the audience over here on YouTube?
Yeah, come on over and join us on Rockfin. It's free. You don't need to make a subscription or anything like that. You don't even need to you can just come over and watch. You don't have to play in the chat. But yeah, come on over. We get to speak freely about things. And it's refreshing over there. It really is. And that's it.
All right. You got something troubling?
Sorry about that. I was going to say, if you have been in the Trutherverse, I'll say, for a while, and you have not made your way over to Rockfin, I'm not really sure what you're doing. The platform is growing. It's up and coming. It's got great content creators already. And when you do decide to create any kind of paid account, you support not only the GLOBEBUSTERS crew, but you also support all the other content creators out there. So if you haven't already, click the link, go check it out.
Yes, and so the link is in the chat. You can always go to rockfin.com/globebusters. It's set to free, no excuse. You can just go and watch it. We have 300 or so on YouTube. So let's bump the number up from 178 over on Rockfin. And I have a few things I want to show you guys, and we'll talk more freely and the way that it should be anyway. So I think what I'm going to try to do is, so we're gonna be in this intervention scene right here. I'm gonna play Kai's new song she made for Skull and Globers as we just transition over to make sure I have everything ended the way it should be. So we'll have a 2-minute intermission that will play our new lyric video from Skull and Globers that Kai just made the song, and then we'll and then we'll pick the show back up on Rockfin. Again, that's rockfin.com/globebusters. All right, cool. Thank you guys for joining us on YouTube. And hopefully we'll see you guys on the other side.
Days after days, pseudoscience just a big charade. Making theories they just can't explain on philosophically biased claims. Days after days, we break away just like a renegade. So pay attention, gonna get a grade. With School and Globers till they all awake. School and Globers with diplomas and a chip on the shoulder. Debate is over, mind is sober, solar system disclosure. Can't go back once you heard the facts. We make a pact, never take the backs. School and ballers and the followers that give them the dollars. They try to holler in the chat that you're a fraud, not a scholar. They hating y'all, that's why they attack. The earth is flat no matter how much they laugh. Days after days, pseudoscience just a big charade. Making theories they just can't explain on philosophically biased claims. Days after days, we break away just like a renegade. So pay attention, gonna get a grade. We School and Globers till they all awake.